As a boy, I did plenty of farm work, growing up on a farm. As a Sierra Club member, I've been active at times in trying to impose local controls upon large confined animal feeding operations due to their water pollution and foul odors for neighbors. In 2020, I became concerned about the impact that urban lawns have on our warming climate because I live in South Kansas City, Missouri. So I started learning about soil regeneration, which led me to thinking about the Farm Bill. At this point, I would like to say that I wish to dedicate our work this hour to the memory of Westport Presbyterian Church's pastor, Scott Myers, who died in his sleep on Friday. Early this summer, he and I did a dialogue on soil during a sermon period. So he was quite an active participant in our concerns about the environment. I have a lot of material in my slides tonight because I'm assuming you'll already have some awareness of most of these topics. Some slides will have probably too much detail to absorb at this setting, but I hope the slides and their links you can access later to help you to dig more into the topics. I hope we can hold questions and comments until I finish this talk, because I can't really entertain deep discussions on any of these matters. I'm a layperson. I think it's more important that we raise some awareness of the entire range of these issues so that each of us can listen in coming days when experts discuss them. By the way, I forgot my hearing aids, so I might not hear questions anyway. So I'll rely on Jerry to stack up any questions there may be. Next slide, please. Here are the major sections of tonight's talk, and you might want to copy and paste these or something if you're on Zoom, because there's a lot of slides. I want to keep you oriented. Next slides. So first of all, we're talking about the problem. The daily news reminds us that Earth is on an accelerating path of climate catastrophe. But we have science and technology that can limit the damage if we can muster the political and cultural will. Next slide. Farmers are greatly affected by weather, and they have a big impact on the climate. EPA's conservative estimate is that agriculture produces 20% of greenhouse gases, but other thoughtful estimates can go up as high as 30% or more when you take into account that methane and nitrous oxide from nitrogen fertilizer are powerful greenhouse gases. And the manufacture of fertilizer uses a lot of natural gas. The book Drawdown by Paul Hawken ranks regenerative agriculture as 11th out of 80 of the most impactful solutions for reducing greenhouse gases. Next slide. Agriculture must be improved because of growing food shortages. The World Bank speaks of food price inflation, with 9% of Earth's people facing hunger and 30% in food being in food insecurity. Poor nourishment makes people vulnerable to diseases. So American farmers should be putting more nutrition into food that they produce. Next slide. Citizens must realize that we have a crisis of soil. A video, Kiss the Ground, I know some of you have seen this. It makes a great visual case, and some say it's hyperbole, but when it says that we have 60 harvests left due to the degrading soil. A 2021 study analyzing satellite imagery says that Corn Belt farmland has lost a third of its carbon-rich soil. So we're in a bad situation, but it can be turned around if we take good action. Nowadays, we hear our warming climate has positive feedback, like when the melting Arctic tundra releases its stored methane. Likewise, on the farm, as our earth warms, all that organic matter in the soil can decompose more quickly. The problem is that our soil is not allowed to work as it did before the 20th century. Let's take a quick glance at some modern soil science as a framework. Next slide. What is soil capable of if it's treated well? In healthy soil, green plants and the soil's microorganisms support each other. Plants synthesize carbon dioxide from the air into an abundance of sugars. Plants extrude up to 40% of those sugars, if it's surplus, through their roots to nourish the soil's microorganisms. There's a lot of recent literature about the role of fungi and bacteria in the soil, and I've provided links. The microorganism community can then store nutrients and feed them back to green plants at optimal times. Also, the soil microbes access distant minerals and the fungi get them to the plants. This is science that became well recognized in the 1990s. As our soils recover from this damage, more farmers can again work with these natural processes which underlie the feasibility of soil regeneration. Next slide. Here we have an image of the soil farm, of the soil food web, showing all of the denizens of the soil who play a role in its richness. Next slide. You can access those later. So what has damaged soils of the USA? For millennia, tilling the soil has exposed microbes to destruction by oxidation. I suppose the microbes and fungi had resilience to withstand that. But in the 1930s, industrial scale agriculture prevailed and soil organic carbon began a decline, which we saw vividly in the Dust Bowl. Next slide. Significant soil damage can be attributed to chemical fertilizers, which became plentiful after ammunition plants closed in 1945. Nitrogen is great for plants. It helps them build amino acids, proteins, ears of corn, and bumper crops. So we talked about the Green Revolution in the 1960s. But a 2021 study at the University of Illinois shows the downside. When microbes of the soil have a high nitrogen supply from fertilizers, they also have a high demand for carbon as an energy source to use that nitrogen. When nitrogen fertilizer is excessive, it may cause them to attack, they go beyond using the decaying soil fragments that are in the soil and start attacking stable organic matter, that is the communities of microorganisms. So these fertilizers are harming the stable communities of microbes that would work in cooperation with green plants. Next slide. And I'll skip this one. Let's go on to the next slide. The crop plants, relying on chemical fertilizers at hand, don't, let's see.
Jim, can we pause for a moment? Hey everyone, we're going to pause here. We're going to try to get a better internet connection, so just stand by.
Dead time.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Hold on one second. Ask everyone if they can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, you got the thumbs up.
Right.
All right, give me 1 second. I gotta share the screen again.
Okay, maybe I should drop back a bit.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
I was saying that when soil is treated well, there's a natural partnership between green plants and the soil microbes. The plant supplies its excess sugars to the microbes. The microbes help out the plants to grow well. And that basic science is what makes us possible for us to talk about soil regeneration. And we looked at an image of the soil food web, and all of this is going to be available on a file that Chad is going to be able to put on the, is going to be able to make available by email so that you can click on the links, which I have in these slides. So I was saying that the crop plants become dependent on chemical fertilizers. And therefore they stop becoming, you know, in a pristine world, plants from the moment they are seeds, they would start detecting the microbes and they would start cooperating with each other. Well, they don't establish those cooperative relationships when they have chemical fertilizer to depend on. So when soil is low on carbon, it's less capable of holding water, because in healthy soil, the fungi are abundant and they secrete a substance called glomalin, which causes the soil to clump. And that makes subsurface voids, which can hold air and water. But after the fertilizers have reduced the soil carbon, the soil becomes compacted and does not have those voids. And so there's excessive runoff of water, carrying fertilizer off into streams. Therefore, below the major river deltas, we are having huge algae blooms, which then rot, consuming oxygen, and that causes dead zones with no marine life down in the Gulf of Mexico and perhaps elsewhere. Next slide. Earlier, I mentioned a rising concern about food shortages. So it's troubling to hear that in soils with inadequate organic matter, green plants produce food that's less nutritious. This is said by Dr. Mark Hyman, who has appeared on PBS, and he says that when there's a lack of organic matter in the soil, that prevents the plants from being able to access nutrients. So the plant's roots provide us less of those nutrients that we used to get from plants. Next slide. Okay, we're now moving to section 2 of our talk. We're starting to talk about solutions to that big problem we talked about. Regenerative agriculture aims to nourish these soil microorganisms. And there are advocates who are pushing for the Farm Bill to change, to increase support for this. A coalition called Farm Action led a Food Not Feed Summit in Washington, D.C. in February. Senator Booker was there. He's on the Agriculture Committee. Next slide. Every 5 years, a Farm Bill is enacted to fund the programs of the USD Department of Agriculture. This provides continuity. These provisions have been achieved through compromises over several decades, and so they are difficult to change very much. Okay, sometimes additional discretionary appropriations for the USDA can be done by other legislation. That happened with the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022, as we will see. Next slide, next slide. On this diagram, you can see the main categories of program funding in the Farm Bill. And You might want to jot down 3 or 4 things about this for later reference. The biggest category is 76% of the funds go for nutrition through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Act. This would be food stamps and other ways of providing help to those who need nutrition. And I'll refer back to this. 9% of the funds go to crop insurance, which pays for 62% of the premiums for farmers who choose to enroll in crop insurance. 7% goes to commodities, and that helps all farmers. That helps to maintain stable commodity prices. This helps benefit all farmers. Loans are made to support market prices, and when there's a need for disaster support, it can come out of this commodities funds. And then 7% presently goes to conservation activities, such as the Conservation Stewardship Program, which in recent years has taken land out of crop production so as to reduce erosion. Next slide. I view this picture as the epitome of soil regeneration because we see some elements of good practices. At the left of the picture, we see cover crops that have grown tall. They have fed these are cover crops that have nourished the soil microbes. And they are being crimped so as to stop them from growing by a machine called a crimper. And if it's done at the right time, those crops will not resume growing. You have to stop the cover crops from growing so that they will not compete with the cash crop. Behind the tractor, we see in a no-till operation, we see that there's what I take to be a planter that is cutting slits in the soil into which the seeds are dropped.
Where's that? In the back.
And we see in front of it, the immediate foreground, we see the crimped stems are lying there to act as mulch that will prevent weeds from growing up. Conventional farmers also will use large quantities of selective herbicides to kill weeds and the remains of the previous crop. But let's see, next slide, I think. But this, by the way, lists some various types of things that can be grown for cover crops, including oats, buckwheat. Some of these things can be sold in the organic market. So the termination of the cover crop can be done without herbicides or tillage. There are techniques for that, but if time is a crush, herbicides can be used. Next slide. So organic farmers will limit the herbicide use by rotating crops from one season to the next. Next slide. So speaking of crop rotation, it is the practice of planting different crops one year after the next. And basically, this adds diversity to the soil's community of microorganisms. Next slide. And that enables a reduced use of herbicides and insecticides because, from what I read, this apparently means that when there's a diversity of microorganisms in the ground, there's likely to be a bacterium or a fungus that's ready to supply a unique chemical that helps a crop plant to defeat a disease or pest that is being threatened, that is threatening that crop plant. So I'm not learned on this science. I'm just saying it seems to account for why organic farmers are succeeding with using these techniques. Next slide. With reduced use of chemical fertilizers, there's less damage to the microorganisms. Now, the yields per acre, doing without the chemical fertilizers or with less of them, may result in less yields per acre than the conventional farmers achieve, but they have far less input cost. So often they are getting higher profits per acre, as we're going to hear somebody say in a minute. Next slide. There are other practices that are also helpful to the soil, and I won't try to speak of all of them. Here in Kansas, people know about the Land Institute, which is developing perennial crops like kernza, which don't require annual tilling. Also, we might mention management intensive grazing, so that you don't just leave a herd in a large pasture for weeks at a time. You use electric fences to move them from one area to the next so that they move like buffalo used to move across the prairie, so that they eat an optimal amount of the grass and the grass can quickly rebound. Also, a herd can be turned into, after a grain crop is harvested, a herd can be turned into graze in that field. And that is how some of these regenerative farmers are achieving their profits by being able to grow the livestock and sell them. Next slide. I want to mention fruits and vegetables because people who raise them are likely to be good soil regenerators. And fruits and vegetables do need to be a larger part of our diets. I mentioned earlier the supplemental nutrition assistance program. It is the largest expenditure. So surely there must be room in there to help encourage more growth of fruits and vegetables. The USDA does have a healthy incentives program. It provides incentives for eating healthy foods. Some of these programs allow users to take coupons and redeem them at farmers markets. The USDA is farming some pilot programs that do help SNAP to help fruits and vegetables. The Farm Bill should provide funds to scale up such efforts. That's what people are saying. And this can be good for young people because young people may not be able to afford the large machinery it takes to profitably raise corn and soybeans. But on small farms, they can raise fruits and vegetables. And so the Farm Bill should take it, should help that. Next slide. We see farmers who are achieving adequate profits after they convert to soil regeneration. Let's look at a 2-minute speech by this fellow, who is Kevin Fulton of Nebraska. And also, let's go ahead and hear him.
You know, I was told I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. I love to do that because I love food. So you can't finish cattle on grass and get them fat. You can't raise good crops without chemicals and fertilizers. But we've made profit every year using regenerative organic methods. My goal is to have a net profit I'm going to spend that for $1,000 an acre. And that would make probably around $1,200 to $1,400 net profit per acre. I think the key to all of this is to try to reduce as many inputs as you can and eliminate some, and at the same time add value on the market again. Seed costs of corn and soybeans are significantly less than what a conventional farmer would spend if they were buying GMO stacked traits. Some of the fertilizer prices that triple, quadruple in price. You know, I'm pretty much immune to any of that. For the conventional farmer, a couple of years ago, on corn was $3 a bushel, they would have to have more record yields to equal the same profits I was getting. If I poured the fertilizer on this, would it be a whole word? Yeah. Would it be? No. I can tell you there's no better satisfaction to load them semi-loads soybeans. It pulls off your farm, you like, there's $35,000 for soybeans in that truck. That's a good feeling. Because we certainly make money out here. It's hard work. I don't mean just me, I mean everybody out here. It's what we can support.
Yeah, I really admire that guy. And Gabe Brown is another one. You can click. Oh, you can also see a longer statement by Kevin, as well as some other speakers, if you click on that webinar that I have a link to later on. By the way, these people, they also talk about how their health is good by not having to immerse themselves in these pesticides. A soil health study showed that out of 30 farms studied, 29 of them had increased net income, and a good percentage of them even had yield increases from using these soil regeneration methods. Next slide. All right, so the farmers can do these good practices, but they do need some help from the USDA because they need help during the transition period. When they go from conventional practices where their soil is permeated with chemicals, the soil can't rebound from that easily. It'll take 2 or 3 years, so they say. And farmers need some help with that. Now, there are programs that help them with it. The Environmental Quality Incentives Program is designed to help the farmers solve specific problems in a specific part of their farm. Or there's the Conservation Stewardship Program, which is a 5-year commitment of land, which is more aimed at the entire operation of the farm. And these programs need to be stepped up so that funds can be provided to help, so that the USDA can share the cost of converting to these better methods. I don't have a link to say it at this point. Well, maybe these links do, but the number of applicants for these programs significantly exceed the available funds. What I've read.
You got about twice as many. Well, what's the imbalance of applicants to funding? You know?
I don't know.
Okay.
The Farm Bill needs to get more money so that they can handle all the applicants, I think, is the basic situation. Next slide. The USDA also, the next slide is going to tell us that the USDA has the National Resource Conservation Service, which operates district offices that for years they've supplied good help with conventional farming, but they need to get more staff who are competent to advise on soil regeneration practices and to view somebody who can give good advice about that, you could click on the link and hear Ray Archuleta talk about soil. Now, as another step along this line, there's a bill now in Congress that would authorize the NCRS to set up agreements with community-based organizations to support peer-to-peer networks. Next slide. And I just heard yesterday through the Sierra Club Food and Ag Network that here in Kansas, somebody has created this website where farm landowners who are interested in the possibility of soil regeneration can go to meet people who have the savvy to do it. You can enroll free up until September 30th. So tell your friends about that, maybe. And there are links that can help you to get onto that website. Next slide. Nearly 20 billion has been authorized by the last year's Inflation Reduction Act for green agriculture. And of that, 3 billion so far has been committed to partnerships for climate smart commodities by the USDA. This consists of big contracts made with large companies who will sponsor carbon sequestration work by farmers who enroll with the company. You can read about it in that link. Now, there's some controversy. Some will say that this is greenwashing for these companies. Are they going to be held to using really effective soil regeneration practices? Will they let people plant cover crops and then just spray them with herbicides or plow them under? That might not help the soil very much. That's the kind of question that I might raise to them. And that's why public attention needs to be focused on these companies who are running these partnerships. Make them accountable. There need to be more such partnerships as demand grows for them. But what's going to happen this year? Will the 2023 budget and will the 2023 Farm Bill cut back on that authorization? Because it was a discretionary authorization done by the IRA. This is something to watch as the Congress works. And next slide.
Functions and dysfunctions.
Yeah. Further controversy can come from the imperfect technology for measuring carbon sequestration, because it's a recent science, I suppose, of taking much interest in it. People are talking about using satellite measurements or maybe using drones to fly over and check the quality of crops, and from that inferring what's happening in the soil. So it's going to be controversial, but arguably the culture needed to be started now, and the funds were available to do it. So I hope they press forward vigorously, and I hope that Congress doesn't cut back on the funds. Next slide. The link gives good justification of this statement. If you increase soil carbon 1%, it will enable retention of 20,000 gallons of water per acre in the soil, because that water can go down deep. And that can reduce runoff. It can reduce the problem with nutrients running into the Gulf of Mexico. So we've seen that there are credible ways to improve the soil, and there's a need for more farmers to start using these practices, and the Farm Bill should help them. But let's now start section 3. What's impeding this from getting into the Farm Bill? The status quo practices continue to damage the soil, and this comes from allocating excessive amounts of land to soy, to corn, soybeans, and sugar. The USDA is subsidizing these things. It makes it hard to alter habits of raising them. Next slide. Why is it hard to change these subsidies? There is plenty of opposition to this subsidy program. A broad-based coalition that includes the Environmental Working Group, a very impressive group, and the U.S. Public Interest Research Group. They recently signed a letter of opposition to increasing farm subsidies. The Heritage Foundation for decades has questioned the status quo of farm subsidies. So that's some political breadth. There's going to be a webinar that you can click on to learn more about the future of farm subsidies.
Where's that coming out of that webinar? Is it in Washington?
The Environmental Working Group is the sponsor.
Is
so-
there a link?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there is.
That.
the link is there. Yeah.
Okay.
So next slide, please. So now I start asking, who is it that benefits from maintaining the present level of subsidies? Well, big farmers do, who we understand they bought this big equipment, they bought this expensive land, they're buying these expensive seeds, and it's going to be hard for them to get off the habit of using that expensive equipment. But there are other people who are benefiting too. Confined animal feeding operations can use this. It makes a cheap price for the corn and soybeans that they feed to their livestock. So that helps their profits. Secondly, all the people who are feeding us, making highly processed foods, using corn sugars, too much of it, not using enough corn and vegetable sourced ingredients. They're benefiting. So, and then third, next slide, please. The oil and gas companies are selling their gas that's an input to making natural nitrogen fertilizer. And the link will tell you how they do it, how the process works. But if they stop doing it, it'll help to reduce emissions. And thirdly, they're providing they're providing ingredients for pesticides. Those hydrocarbons, it is said by the National Institute of Health that they are more highly carcinogenic than even the declared active ingredient of the pesticides. So there's plenty of reasons to want to, they're making profits selling this stuff, but is it in our interest that they do? And fourthly, companies, there are companies nowadays that are having artificial intelligence programs and drones that can go out and search for weeds and spray them. I call this macho aesthetic. Don't allow a single intruding plant to violate the uniform appearance of your monocrop. Just like us with our turf in the city. Next slide. I think the most problematic part of the existing farm subsidy regime, from what I know so far, is the crop insurance program. The 1930s from the 1930s onward, farmers could buy insurance for losses from weather or pest. From 1994 onward, farmers also could buy protection from losses due to falling prices. So this removes the risk of losses. They can get a safe and dependable income by monocrops, corn, soybeans, wheat, and the rest. And remember, 62% of the premiums are paid by the USDA. Furthermore, as the climate worsens, these losses are becoming larger. And it'll make even more insurance claims. Okay, next slide. So, just to name a couple of the problems with the crop insurance regime. First is, to be eligible for benefits, you must comply with good farming practices as named by the USDA entity. These have not been updated enough to adequately include soil regeneration practices. Secondly, soil regenerating farmers will have smaller losses, and they should pay smaller premiums. For a full discussion of what needs to change about crop insurance, there's a link provided by the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. Next slide. Okay, so now we're getting to more basic problems that I don't expect the Farm Bill can be changed for this year, but it needs to start entering our conversations as we get ready for the Farm Bill of 2028. The Inflation Recovery Act provides 20 million, as we said, for green ag. And so 8% of US methane emissions are coming from how CAFOs manage their manure. Therefore, the USDA has made CAFOs eligible for tax credits to reduce their methane emissions.
Feeding operation.
Yeah, confined animal feeding.
It's a corporate feedlot.
Yeah, huge lots. And they can get credits for installing anaerobic digesters, which will separate the methane from the solids, put the methane into a pipeline or use it to heat their barns. And then the solids could be used for fertilizer, which some people don't like because it's very concentrated with nutrients. This has unintended, next slide, please. Unintended consequences. It motivates CAFOs to get even larger because they've got to be pretty large to make use of one of these digesters. If they locate it near a disadvantaged community, like the edge of the town where disadvantaged people live, a credit add-on. And lastly, the CAFOs need to prolong their useful life in order to amortize the cost of the digester. The Farm Bill still could act to reduce these incentives for methane digesters for these large corporate animal feeding operations. Another significant problem, well, like I say, the Farm Bill should take account of that digesters this year. But next slide, please. There's another problem which requires a longer term conversation, that is biofuels. There are mandates that automobile fuels have 9% ethanol content. And so that motivates the production of ethanol from corn and soybeans. The problem is that that does push up food prices, and it motivates farmers to bring even more uphill land into cultivation, which should be put into conservation. And it can even disrupt the economies in developing countries. So, like Senator Feinstein has said, this mandate needs to be ended. Excuse me. The funds instead should go toward production of biofuels like hemp. Hemp could produce biodiesel, and it could create very deep roots. So those are conversations that would be very worthwhile to have. Next, a big opportunity is agrivoltaics. Corn and crops and livestock can be grown under elevated racks of solar panels. Solar panel racks are routinely built to withstand winds of 150 miles an hour. So this is not scary. This partial shade reduces heat stress and water consumption for the animals or plants that are underneath them. The green plants still receive enough light rays of the right frequencies for optimal growth. And farm workers and even pollinators who are underneath it are better for the partial shade. Also, the solar panels produce electricity more efficiently because they are not subject to heat reflection from gravel underneath them. And by the way, people, these solar farms that put gravel underneath their solar panels, they routinely spray them with insecticide, herbicides. Next slide, please. Okay. I'm not going to try to go through in detail through all of this, but there are several marker bills, so-called marker bills, that are currently filed in Congress as a way to advocate for changes that should be put into the draft of the Farm Bill. Next slide. I want to point particularly to the Local Processing Act, strengthening Local Processing Act, which could help in the development of small regional processing plants for meat and poultry. This could really help for the raising of animals on grass without having to go through large corporate feedlots. There are others as well. All of them have links that you can click on if you go to this file. Next slide, please. There's also equity issues. One of them would help to make SNAP provide better at providing food and fruits and vegetables to low-income people. And then there's a commission that would document discrimination against Black farmers and ranchers and recommend actions to help with that. The layperson was not inhibited by a lack of expertise. But now in these seemingly more complex times, the citizen is apt to feel that it's all too much for him, and that anyway, what with the great number of planning commissions, study groups, and professionals of one kind or another, the job is best left to experts. This is not, alas, the case. This well-regarded writer of the mid and late 20th century. And I think we're in a similar position. Up till now, we've up till now, I'd always thought, well, the experts of the Department of Agriculture, I'm not going to spend a lot of time studying all this, what they do, because it's such a arcane stuff, and they must know what they're doing. But we see that they have a regime that is not treating the soil well. And as lay people, we should not leave the job of influencing Congress as they write the farm bill to the experts. We should at least let, I hope that we can find ways to let our Congress offices of our Congress people and senators know that we are knowledgeable about this stuff. And while we can't dictate to them what the farm bill should say, we expect that they will have their staffs sincerely research what is in the public interest. Jerry?
I noticed one of your slides, you had something up there about the EATS bill. I understand that is a bill that would favor big ag compared to small farms. Do you have anything, did you research that sufficiently to say anything about it?
If you click back a slide or two.
There it is.
Yeah. Well, I did see an article from, well, it was, I think, Reuters or perhaps The Guardian in England that had an article that gave some background on this. And this came out of a California statute, which requires that pork be grown with a certain amount of freedom for the individual animal, room to move around instead of being in a pen where they could not turn around even. Congress says, California statute says you can't sell pork that's raised from outside the state in a traditional CAFO. Well, and therefore, our senators, Marshall and Schmidt, are co-sponsors of this bill that would say, no, this is interstate commerce and you can't block that from happening. But what is interesting is that when you look at that article that I've linked, there are some of the pork growers in California who are willing to obey the statute. They are realizing that it is a healthier way. It is even economically better, in their view, for them to raise the animals in a more humane way. And so while the majority of confined animal feeders still want to use their aggressive small pen ways, there is not unanimity among pork producers about that. And so the more we can express our views on this, the better, I would say. Anything else to add about that?
What's the timeline for the farm bill being renewed? Like, is it that? I don't know when it comes out. Is it this fall?
2023, 5 years after 2018. That's now.
So we're right, but what is it?
It
Summer, fall?
It expires at the present farm bill expires at the end of September 2023. And so theoretically, that is a deadline. But it seems like Congress can always find a way to finagle for a week or two or a month or two, or with hearing existing authority as it is or whatever. I realize there is skepticism that anything will be done to change the subsidy regime because there is such strong political support for continuing it as it is. But there needs to be enough said about this now so that it will affect, so that it will create a basis for talking about it during the presidential elections next year as well. That can be a good vehicle for talking about what should be in the 2028 Farm Bill.